Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Shanka Show. Stories about life in the Soviet Union. Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи. В эфире программа Ушанка Show. And in today's video we're going to talk about hunting in the Soviet Union. Охота в Советском Союзе.
This guy may have actually grown up in the USSR, but he's still a charlatan. The view he takes in his earlier videos is very much, some parts were good, some parts bad, overall life was fine, but there has been a steady slide into sensationalistic anti.
This topic was requested quite often. For example, Dr. Calamari asked, can you do a video about what hunting was like in the Soviet Union? Types of cartridges and guns used, games hunted, laws, and legalities. I've been always interested in this topic. Okay, so let's begin with a short lesson of the Russian language. Урок русского языка. Охота. Охота is the Russian word for hunting. Охота. But you need to be careful with this word because охота also means desire. And a hunter is охотник. Охотник. But before we're gonna get into nitty-gritty details, let's talk about hunting in the Soviet Union. The big picture. The main problem with hunting in the Soviet Union, and I'm talking right now about the European part of the USSR, there was hardly anything to hunt. If you follow my channel, you probably would remember that as a kid and as a teenager, I spent a lot of time, pretty much every summer, in the 70s and 80s and part of the 90s, in northern Ukraine in a small village that was surrounded by pine forests. And I spent a lot of time in that forest, mushroom hunting, berry picking, with my friends, with my dad, and guess what? In all those years, I saw a rabbit once, I saw a wild pig once. One time, on a far distance, my dad claimed that there was a moose racing across the meadows. And one time when me and my buddies, for whatever reason, decided to go and explore the forest at night in the darkness, we got scared shitless by a screaming fox. We never knew it was a fox. Many years later, I discovered it was a fox. It was making this really scary screams. So that was the only animals I saw in more than 20 years. One rabbit, one wild pig, and I heard a fox. That's it. So you can imagine my shock when I came for the very first time to America back in the summer of 1995, and I ended up working in a summer camp in the middle of nowhere, southwest Michigan. In a single week, I saw more wildlife here in Michigan than I saw in all my life in 20-some years in Ukraine. I saw a bunch of deer, I saw rabbits, woodchucks, raccoons, snakes. It was unbelievable, especially deer. I was so shocked that they were everywhere. But what shocked me the most here in Michigan were rabbits. I was just so surprised that they absolutely were not afraid of humans. Like they would be just sitting on the side of the road, munching on the grass, not pay attention to you. Only if you try to approach them, then they will bolt. Back in Ukraine, I said I saw one time rabbit in the village, and it was one more time in the winter when I went on a ski trip with my mother and a friend of mine. We saw a rabbit from a far distance, running across the fields. That's it. And here, rabbits are everywhere, and they're just not afraid of people. Another example, roadkill. That thing was unknown in the Soviet Union. I never seen a single dead animal, maybe a cat, laying by the road. And here, when I started riding bike, since we had no car in the camp, if you want to go and see something, you have to ride the bike. And I was shocked to see so many dead animals lying around the highways, deer and especially raccoons. That was the new word that I learned that summer, the roadkill. And the same summer, when I was on a bike ride one evening, I got almost knocked out by the deer. Like they bolted out of the bushes, ran in front of my bike, so close. I was like, whoa, that was crazy. Just something like that. It's just unimaginable in Ukraine. I have another good story about roadkill. So when my mother came to visit us here in Michigan back in 2005, I had to drive all the way to New York City to pick her up at JFK because she never flew before and she didn't want to switch planes anywhere. So she said, if I'm getting on the plane in Kyiv, you should be on the other end to meet me. So I met her at JFK and then we drove back to Michigan, and she was heartbroken when she saw all the dead deer lying along the highway still in New York. She actually asked me to stop and check on the deer to see maybe it's still alive. And by that time, 2005, so I already lived in America full-time for 5 years. I was not a big fan of deer anymore. I thought they were beautiful animals. But then when I finally purchased a house and I had a small plot of land, I tilled it right away. I planted sunflowers, corn. I was so excited to have my own garden. And then one morning, I went outside to check on my plants, and everything was mowed down. Deer came at night and ate everything. And that was another shock, because back in Ukraine, you don't need to have fences to protect your gardens from wild animals, because guess what? There's no wild animals. You just have this basic fence against the cows, because cows can't hop over the fence. So that was another thing I learned about life in Michigan. If you want to have an outdoor garden, you need to protect it, because my goodness, I end up going small, making a box garden, and still I had deer hopping over the fence. I had woodchucks digging under the fence. I had rabbits squeezing somehow in the little tiny holes and destroying my garden year after year. It was so annoying. So the only hunting that I was aware of while I was staying with my grandparents in northern Ukraine was duck hunting in August. In August, there was a hunting season for ducks, I guess, and one of our neighbors had the relatives coming from the city, and they'll be real hunters, with the rubber boots and shotguns, and they'll go into the river in the evening or early morning and try to shoot ducks. Otherwise, there was no hunting going on whatsoever. And the only type of hunting that I know of was just shooting animals with their shotgun, single barrel or double barrel. There was no crazy stuff like here that it starts with the bow hunting and the crossbows. Then it goes to the regular hunting shotguns. Then it goes to the muzzle loaders and all that stuff just to sell more products to the hunters. It was just one type of hunting, and that's it. And I had another viewer ask quite a few questions on topic of hunting. And first question was, how was hunting regulated in the USSR? The hunting rules and regulations changed over the years. Back in 1923, there was actually a hunter tax. People had to pay 10 rubles a year to be a hunter. But generally, you were allowed to hunt only if you had a special ID, so-called охотничий билет, and you should be a member of a hunter club. The second question, where were popular hunting locations? I actually managed to locate this interesting looking map from 1939. So this is a hunting map of the Soviet Union. So obviously, if you were looking for some large game to hunt, maybe bears, moose, deer, whatever, you had to travel long distances in Siberia, beyond the Urals, or all the way to the Far East, or maybe Caucasian mountains. But of course, it wasn't that easy to travel. Not many people had cars. So except, political leaders and party leaders, people usually don't travel far to hunt. Next question, what were popular game to hunt in the USSR? Well, obviously, what was available to hunt for Leonid Brezhnev wasn't available for a regular Soviet citizen. So it wasn't about what was popular, it pretty much what was available. As I mentioned earlier, the most popular game was wild ducks, дикие утки. Then, of course, зайцы, rabbits. In the winter, some people tried to hunt foxes for their fur. This strange-looking bird, глухарь, was also a popular game. Capercaillie, глухарь. And another wild bird was рябчик, grouse. Рябчик. And of course, дикие свиньи, wild pigs, was another popular hunting game. And if you want to hunt some big boys, big game like deer, moose, bears, and so on, you needed to have access to the special hunting preserves, which required to have blood, special connections, or paying a lot of money. And in the 1970s, Soviet government began allowing foreigners to come and hunt for the big game, and it became a big source of foreign currency for the USSR. And of course, if you really wanted to impress your friends, you could get hired to hunt whales with the anti-tank rifles. The next question, with vehicle ownership limited, how did hunters get to hunting locations? For example, if you live in Kiev, how did you go about taking a firearm and camping supplies to the woods if you did not have your own vehicle? Well, I can only guess because my family were never hunters and my grandparents either. If you live in a city and you're into hunting, you probably would own a vehicle. So that was kind of more, if you're a city person and you're into hunting, you're already like a Soviet elite and you will have a vehicle. Otherwise, there were people living out in the country, in the villages, then they just walked to the nearby forest, tried to score a fox or a rabbit. Next question. Were you allowed to keep all the meat and furs from your game? I believe so. I'm not 100% sure. As I said, I've never been into hunting, and I never knew anyone who was a hunter, but I think you could keep the meat and the fur. And another question, how did people view hunting as a culture in the USSR, especially the views between urban citizens and rural citizens? Okay, so let me give you some numbers first of all. So according to the statistics I found, there were about 2 million hobby hunters in the Soviet Union, and the total population was about 286 million. In the United States of America right now, it's 26 million hunters and 333 million population. So there's a 10 times more hunters per capita, whatever, in the United States versus Soviet Union. If you had the same proportion in America like in the Soviet Union for hunters, you would have only 2.3 million hunters in America right now, and you have 26 million. So 10 times more than the Soviets had. Also, you need to remember that guns were quite expensive in the Soviet Union. For example, a popular hunting shotgun Izh, there's different models, 17, 26, and so on. They were around 100 rubles. And the average salary was 150 rubles a month. So picture if you make $3,000 a month, you pay in about $2,000 for basic shotgun. That's a lot of money. So I think it would be fair to say that hunting was not popular in the Soviet Union, except if you were a member of party elite, because then you had money, you had access to the premium wildlife preserves, and you could travel all over the country, helicopters, airplanes, whatever you want. So we see a lot of pictures of Comrade Khrushchev, Comrade Brezhnev, and other party leaders hunting and having a good time, but not your average Soviet citizen. And I almost forgot to mention braconieri, the poachers. Apparently there was a big problem in the Soviet Union with people hunting in the wrong time, disregarding the rules and laws. I can only tell because of the caricatures. There was a lot of braconier-related caricatures in the Soviet magazines. But I said, since there was really nothing to hunt in Ukraine, we didn't have that problem. And by the way, if you're interested in the topic of fish in the Soviet Union, I already have a bunch of videos on the topic and actually assembled them on one hour long video. I'll provide the link below in the comment section. Okay, my friends, that's all I can tell you about hunting in the Soviet Union. If you have any more questions, please post it in the comment section. You can always support my work with your likes, with comments on Patreon, or become a member of my channel. Thank you for watching Ushanka Show, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.